Good morning. Welcome to Accuracy in America, episode 189. And I'm your host, Don Irvine, joined by my co-host, Brian McNichol.
Good morning. Hello, deplorables, dregs, despicables, chumps, Neanderthals, and those dog-faced pony soldiers.
Yes. So anyway, how things going? We may have another storm coming. I want, I'll keep bringing up this weather thing because I don't know that we're only, 3 weeks into January, and we've already had been hit a decent amount of times, with snow of varying and ice of varying levels and variety. But it's been kind of brutal.
Yeah, I think we've had more snow already than we had all of last winter.
I believe that.
Yeah. So, and a long way to go. And the excuse me, the Farmer's Almanac said that next month was supposed to be worse than this month. So it could be interesting.
Yeah, I mean, and February can be pretty bad. I mean, we've seen late January to early February, mid-February storms that have been pretty. We can see some pretty bad storms. I'm like, this is at my age. This is not what I want to see. It's like, I'm groaning every time. I'm like, oh, this driveway. I don't want snow. I got to shovel it. No, there aren't any kids in the neighborhood who will, come by. We got kids across the street who probably could shovel. They might not be great at it. I mean, they kind of help their dad shovel, their driveway a lot of times. But what they prefer to do, because they're still on the younger side of the probably just getting into that teen year thing, is that there's a small little hill in their backyard on their side of the street, and they prefer, with some other friends, they prefer just to slide down that little hill and spend all their time doing that.
It's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun.
And I know they're teenagers in the neighborhood because, I mean, we still have the school bus that comes by and picks up the high school kids and everything like that. But you don't see them, it's so different than my childhood, when there would be just throngs of kids going around the neighborhoods, offering to shovel snow. I mean, as time goes on, fewer and fewer kids are doing that kind of, manual labor. They're busy playing video games, and they're probably getting nice little allowances from their yuppie parents or whatever we want to call them. And so they're soft. They're soft.
My kids want to know more about these allowances you're talking about.
Well, okay, so I'm not here's my answer. Okay. So I never actually had a regular allowance as a child.
Me either.
My father, the way I earned money, besides say cutting grass and cutting neighbors' lawns and things like that, or shoveling snow with some friends, we'd go and as a team and shovel snow in places, was that back in those days, back growing up in the 60s and 70s, sodas came in bottles, right? They came in like usually the pack of bottles.
And we did that.
Right, and they were returnable. So I think it was a nickel, something like that. Anyway,
a nickel. Some of them were 10 cents. Something like Maine was 10 cents. We all wanted to move to Maine.
So that was it. My mother was a Diet Right Coca-Cola addict. I mean, and and you can't even buy that stuff anymore. I mean, I think that stuff had aspartame in it or whatever, stuff that's been banned long ago and whatnot. She eventually had to switch to like Sprite or something like that or whatever, some other things. But we always had tons of 6-packs in the house of this. My father's always going to the grocery store buying it. So my thing was that my job was, when I went grocery shopping with my parents, which I don't know how many kids actually go grocery shopping with their parents, but I did this. Yeah, I did this not necessarily because I wanted to go grocery shopping, but I wanted that 30 cents or 60 cents or 90 cents. That was it.
That's right. Yeah.
So I mean, I think even cutting lawns back in those days, did I get $10, $5? I don't remember, but I mean, obviously that would be a drop in the bucket compared to today, and things like that. But I keep thinking, like, why can't these kids come around to do this? I may have to put out a plea to my church friends and say, okay, any of your teens willing to come over here and do a little work once in a while when I'm really feeling like I don't want to shovel this stuff?
Yeah. The thing is, though, like those guys, they can't really move around, right? when it's snowy, when you really need it done, it's like their parents are making them stay home.
That's right.
They're going to drive around in the snow to help your driveway, right?
That's right.
Like, you got
That
to
is
take
the
care of
other
that
problem.
driveway out the door, buddy.
That's the other problem and everything like this. But there's also speaks to things that we have kind of made, we've kind of been watching the news or maybe even talked about a little bit. It's just, you know, people are not having children at the rate they were when we were younger. And this is decreasing. I mean, America's facing this. Asia's been having this problem for years. China's facing this problem thanks to their one child policy. Europe is in a problem. I mean, so the replacement rate is out of whack now. It's
Right.
it's way below where it should be.
Yeah,
And
the 2000s are on track to be the first century in the history of mankind that there's fewer people at the end of it than at the start of it.
Wow. Okay. I believe that. I'm not surprised at that at all in that long run, because I do think that when it comes to these school enrollments, we had this boom period where school enrollment was out the wazoo, and I think that's going to tail off. I mean, I think you're going to start seeing a decline, and I would not be surprised in Montgomery County if we wind up being back in the same situation we were about 35 years ago or thereabouts, where they actually were closing schools because they didn't have enough students.
That's right.
And
that Northwood.
Right. They closed Northwood. Northwood reopened, under a new
Woodward.
name.
There was one called Woodward they closed too.
Woodward is long gone. Yeah. Woodward may have been.
Woodward is now like a school board office building or something.
Is that right?
The school board uses the building, but it's not as a school.
Yeah, it's been a long time since Woodward. Woodward was a smaller school, because part of the problem with Woodward, because I know the county, is that it was only just down the street from Walter Johnson.
Right.
So you had a lot of high schools in a very small area, and you couldn't support.
There's big homes there. It's not as densely packed as some of the other areas.
Right. So I do think that this is going to be an issue going forward. But if you have fewer kids, there's just a dearth of kids in the age range to go and do these things anyway. I mean, and this is going to be a problem, for people to just retail staff have to find the people to work in their stores. These are all things that are coming down the pike, and I think we're seeing some of the effects of this now, but I think it's only going to get worse as we move forward. I guess this, what I wanted to, I don't know if you actually look at these things, but I just happened when I was looking at that news report, and they showed two models. They showed the European model for this weekend, and they showed the American model. And the European model called for like 14 inches of snow, and the American model is like half an inch in my area. And I'm like, okay, that's a little bit too much of a variance, in my opinion. So I don't know what the deal. I don't know what the deal is with the European model at all.
European always calls for more snow than the American ones. Sometimes it's right, and sometimes the other one is right. But European model almost always calls for more snow. Would you say 14 inches?
That's like a factor of like almost 30.
Yeah, that's a big. You don't see them that far apart. That's true.
Yeah, that's a little bit too much, and I don't know what they're calling there. But you and I both know, having lived, since you've lived here a long time too. It's just that any snow, icy conditions, it just throws this region into havoc. It can be half an inch, and it's still bad. So I'm not looking forward to it. I'm not looking forward to it, but nothing I can do about fighting Mother Nature and climate change. That's the watchword, right?
Good thing we have that global warming.
That's right.
Could be worse, right? Like they say about the vaccines. Hey, it could be worse.
That's right. So I have to tell you this thing about the whole climate change thing. So I was reading this article from the Wall Street Journal from the other day, and they were talking about the storms that had hit California, the kind of the Sierra Nevadas area, and they got like 3 feet of snow, and they had power was out for 2 weeks and all this stuff. And there was a quote in this article that just made me laugh, which was a guy says, "I can't believe, PG&E, Pacific Gas and Electric, hadn't better prepared, for this, with global warming, hadn't buried the lines and everything like this." This guy was a 45-year-old puppeteer It's like, what what does he, what does this guy know about anything? He's like, oh yeah, they're supposed global warming and snowstorms, or I mean, climate change, snowstorms. That's a thing. That's for them too, right? So they were supposed to be able to predict.
Nothing disproves it, Don.
Yeah.
Everything that happens proves global warming. There's
Right. I
no
mean,
evidence against it, and none is permitted.
It always goes back to that. But I thought, what a perfect career. The 45-year-old puppeteer chiming in as as if he knows anything about anything, which is, as typical of most of the people who talk about that issue, right? Is that they know nothing. They have no background in whatsoever. They just read the news, watch the news, and listen to all the hype, and all the lies in the end. So here, January 19th, Biden has now been in office for a year, basically, right? I mean, he took office on the 20th, but I mean, he's gone the full circle, and this has been an absolutely miserable year. I mean, when I see articles in the news media, the liberal media, they're trying to dance around it in some respects, but others are just saying they have no explanation for this. They're trying to figure out what happened. How they were all so enthusiastic a year ago, optimism. They thought this was going to be great after 4 years of Trump, and it has been a complete disaster.
Yeah, I remember them. They showed the I guess the reflecting pool, and had the little candle lights around it. And they said, "Oh, it looks like Joe Biden outstretching his arms and hugging America and bringing us all together." Like during the inauguration last year, like, that's interesting. So, I mean, he had a window to do it, right? If you look at the polling, he had a nice 4 or 5 month honeymoon until you can start to see that they really have their act together on vax policy, mask policy. They're terrible in court, right? They keep losing in court. They had a bunch of debacles at the border, which started to shake people's confidence. But the real hammer was Afghanistan. So they went into Afghanistan, without a plan, and they tried to blame that on Trump. But Trump had already told the Taliban that he had no intention of giving up the country on May 1st because they had not met the conditions that he set down. They knew that, right? So Biden, for the purpose of being able to say on 9/11 that, hey, 20 years later, where I got us out of this war, abruptly pulls us out with no preparation, abandons the only airfield that could have gotten us all out, and did that and left thousands of Americans behind, accidentally killed a missionary family trying to show he's tough, and bombed something just to say he bombed something, and and no answer, no way to go back in. That kind of woke up America to the fact that he's completely incompetent, and the people working for him are no better. So Trump was about 46, 47% in the polls those days. When that happened, he has not been back to 40, even 45 since. He's in the he's right around 40% on Rasmussen now. So, I mean, and he spent some time in the 30s, which he had never done before in the last week. It's not getting better. It's getting worse. It seems like they can't even get to 42 much anymore because, there's no achievements to point to. And there's just, bitter infighting. And there's this, they got next to nothing out of the infrastructure because I think people, viewed that as it could have happened under Trump, but for Democrat obstructionism, right? They didn't want to give Trump that kind of win, even though he was ready to do big things for infrastructure. So now you have kind of a smallish infrastructure legislation that there's been no action on yet. So all these shovel-ready projects, we're not all that shovel-ready because, what are we, 5-6 months after that passed, we haven't turned a shovel yet. So, it's looking like the Obama infrastructure bill, which basically was a payoff to the unions. So border is back in complete catastrophe, humanitarian disaster, completely unorganized. Fentanyl, which comes in the southern 90% of the fentanyl in the country comes in across the southern border through Mexico from China. We had the border stop. We were slowing down significantly the amount of fentanyl in the country. Now it's back up, and it is the leading cause of death among people 19 to 45, not COVID. COVID kills almost nobody in that age group, but fentanyl is killing tons of people more than ever before. So, people can see these things. They can see that inflation now is year over year record rate, right? It's almost 9%, right? And, the last couple of weeks, it's been almost 9% more this year than last year. Fuel, when Trump left office, there was a lot of fuel around the country, a lot of gasoline available for less than $2 a gallon. Now it's $3.50, $4 a gallon, maybe more, depending on where you are, because once you get upward price pressure, you get more upward prices, right? Grocery stores are, stocks are going down. What do they call it? Bear shelves. Biden, has been trending for weeks on Twitter. Then our transportation secretary said that he had taken care of the port problem and supplies would certainly soon be headed our way. Right now, it's the biggest backup at the ports ever. It's bigger than ever. So nothing has been taken care of. So it's point me to one competent person in this administration. One of them who's, even if what he's doing is not our goals, but one person who's effectively doing the thing they were hired to do.
Yeah, I mean, I think that would be pretty hard pressed to figure out who's actually shining in this administration. You said something during these remarks here about the legal thing. They keep losing these court battles. That which makes me wonder. I mean, what's the reasoning? What do you think is going on there? I mean, has Biden put together? I mean, have this administration just wound up with people, in the Justice Department and whatnot that are just not prepared? They have filed these cases. I mean, they're trying to defend policies and things like that they really don't have legal standing. I mean, has this legal team of Biden's? I mean, are they that bad? I mean, have they really botched it that badly?
Well, I mean, I think that they're it's ideology uber alles, right? So they don't really care. They just and like Biden said when he knew the mask vax mandate was going to get overturned. It's like we're just going to try to get away with it as long as we can, right? I mean, he knew it wasn't lawful, so they don't really care. I mean, they don't really they'll clean it up then. He's also he's been reversed on immigration policy. He's been reversed on trade policy. He's been reversed now on vax policy. Not enough, though. They still are requiring the healthcare workers to get it, even though healthcare workers are the least likely to actually be a problem for anybody because almost all of them at least have immunity at this point from having worked with so many people who have it. They just gang that can't shoot straight. They have a really awful press secretary, rubs people the wrong way, never has the answers that she's asked for, seems to value snark over substance, right? They're reluctant to answer. They don't put him in front of anything. They tell him when he has a press conference or when he interacts with the press at all, they tell him, here is the questioner, and here's the question they're going to ask, and here's your answer. Did you imagine them doing that with Trump? Right? They may have told Trump, expect a question on X, Y, or Z, but Trump was out there on his own. And that wasn't a problem because he actually knew why he was doing what he was doing.
Yeah, on Jen Psaki, I wonder now, it's just, once again, I mean, people who were there at the beginning of administration, they thought, okay, we got this. This is going to be great. Anything is better than Trump. America's they'll love it. The reporter, the media's, we're going to have the meeting out of our hands. They're definitely, pro Biden, Harris, going in there. And at the beginning, it was probably fine for them because I think, you kind of mentioned, they had that first go round, those first few months, they went through things and they were doing okay. But it has rapidly deteriorated since then. And that's been a problem. And when that starts to happen, I think, this is where the press secretaries, there's a lot of pressure on them. And I'm not trying to give any excuses at all to Jen Psaki, because I mean, you took that job, what you're supposed to be getting into, but I'm beginning to think that, that she's wearing thin on this, that her temperament and everything like this is starting to show, because it's like, it is kind of like, even reporters, or they want some answers about some things and they're not getting the straight answers. And so
I think she knows she's in over her head.
Yeah,
which is an ugly feeling, makes those people unhappy and unpleasant to deal with.
Yeah, I mean, look, I mean, and being the press secretary for a president is never necessarily an easy thing. There's lots of things you got to deal with, but and I can't I can't even imagine what it was like working for Trump. I mean, because Trump was the news himself, and you'd have to watch what he was tweeting to figure out what you were going to be defending, in the press conference and whatnot. But Biden Harris, it's just that the policies and the missteps that they've made, have just been
Just the
glaring.
confusion. They're like no idea what to do in all these situations.
Yeah. And I don't see them out there really doing anything to reassure America on any of this. I mean, you mentioned the inflation. I mean, eventually I do think that it will drop down a little bit. I'm just not as confident we're going to get to say 3% inflation as soon as some of the pundits say we are, or the apologists say we are. May take, because every time you go to the store and everything like this, I mean, we keep seeing effects of prices are up, and there's lots of different factors, but it meant in consumers mentality, higher prices are higher prices, and who's to blame? It's the person who's running the country in general that's going to get the blame for not being able to solve it, especially when you have a guy like Biden, who was supposedly fixed the supply chain problem at the ports, and as you mentioned, it only got worse. And so they go out and they make these statements and they say we're gonna go and fix this, and they don't. Things get worse. The
Border keeps getting worse. Remember, they sent Kamala down there, and that made things worse. All those deals that Trump had made with the Golden Triangle countries to keep their people at home, they abandoned those deals and they went back. Now they're trying to put them back in place. The wait for your asylum hearing in the U.S. policy, Trump threw it out. They rescinded Trump's policy. Court said no. Trump's right. You got to do what he was doing. So it's a lot of humiliation. So now, go ahead.
No, I was going to say with Kamala, the thing here too is that she started off as that rising star, right? I mean, the presumptive successor to Biden, and we've talked about some of this in the past.
Yeah.
But what has happened? I mean, there's been a complete implosion. She's disastrous in everything that Biden's given her to handle, and now she's really more of a liability, in my opinion, than an asset. She may be the most useless vice president we've seen in a long, long time.
Yeah, you can't
right?
let her get interviewed. You can't let her give speeches. You can't really put her in front of the public because she has no ability to handle questions or work on her feet or anything like that. It's just been.
I mean, wasn't there some friendly interview she just had? I meant to, and then she
Yeah.
blew that too. Yeah.
They said, should we be doing this every day? Right. And she goes, we should do what we do every day. And that's the thing that we do today, or something like. I mean, it's just the answer. You got to go back and read it, but it's really funny, and it's like, I don't have an answer to this at all. So I, and it's like I put on Twitter like she should do the Admiral Stockdale thing and just say I'm all out of ammo on this. I don't know, right? I don't know. It would be better than what she tries to put in the place of. I don't know. Her people who work for her say that she won't prepare. Like they give her talking points. This is what's coming at you. Be ready for these questions, right? Be ready. These are the people that you're going to meet, and this is what they're famous for. And so you have all that in your head when you meet them. And she won't study it, and it's blunder after blunder because information being given to her she's not consuming. So I don't think any of the Democrat Party poobahs right now see her as a viable candidate in 2024. Any of them.
Yeah, and what you're saying there about the preparation or just the thing how she did this, I mean in this age of social media, you're going to get pummeled one way or the other. But I do think there's more value for her to at least be honest and say something that's where she doesn't can say I don't have an answer for that or something like that. That is far better than trying to circle around with a non-answer that makes absolutely no sense, because you're definitely going to get pummeled for that, and you're going to look far worse than if she said, yeah, I don't, this is all I can say on that, or I don't have an answer. At least you're honest. At least people can say, all right, at least she was forthright about that. But trying to make something out of it and then making it worse doesn't help her at all. And here again, once again, every week that we sit here in front of on this show, we're getting that 1 week closer to the election, and it's just 1 week closer to kind of a Democrat annihilation in a lot of ways, because the Biden and Harris are not helping the party. There's nothing positive coming out of the White House that is helping the
ask
party.
Terry McAuliffe, right? He brought them both into stump. They were both, generous with their time. Biden just came to Arlington a couple of times, but Harris went to Richmond and the beach area. She actually put some time into it, and it made his prospects go down. Things got worse for him for bringing in the president and the vice president of your party. They're stuck in a thing here. They are on the hook for decisions that they need to change. And if they it's like the saying, Trump keeps saying the vaxes work, right? Take your vax, right? And they're like, why does Trump say that, right? Why won't he just be anti-vax? Well, Trump developed the vaxes, right? He was the politician who rode herd on the vax project. If the vaxes don't work and they're killing people, which they are, that's sort of his fault, right? I mean, he can, you could, it's going to take the mainstream media long to make that connection. Oh, Trump now says vaxes that he forced on us are dangerous, right? So Trump toes the party line because he knows he must. But the Democrats, they're making some claims that everyone knows are implausible. Like this whole battle over the mask, right? The governor of Virginia gets elected. One of his day one executive orders is that the statewide forcing kids to wear masks in schools is off, right? And so 3 systems in Northern Virginia, maybe 4, because I'm not sure what's going on in Loudoun. I keep hearing it's on again, off again there. But Fairfax, Arlington, and Alexandria have said, the CDC says keep wearing masks, so we're going to keep wearing masks. And so there's getting ready to be a battle. And the governor, I don't think he anticipated the battle or knows quite how to win it yet. I mean, I'm sure he's he's from McLean. I'm sure he can find some lawyers in his Rolodex and start figuring this out. But but I mean, that's one of the things they need to work on is they're going to have to mount a response to this. The executive order does not start until the 24th. So he has 5 days to at least show them that he can force them to do this or remove their funding or whatever. I'm not sure what weapons he has at his disposal. I think they were kind of blindsided by this, and it'll be a lesson for them to learn. But the Democrat Party, everybody looks like this is a tough thing for Trump. I mean, for a Youngkin, but people, the tide is turning against kids wearing masks in schools. It doesn't save the kids from getting sick. It obviously doesn't really do much to prevent transmission. The kids don't like it. It makes it harder for them to concentrate. There's a wide and growing evidence that like what's going on in schools today is inadequate, right, for our society, that people are not learning enough. Test scores are going way down in a big hurry because of response to the vax, basically. So you're looking at a lost generation unless they can get control of these policies. And so the Democrats they're not backing up one bit on mandatory masks, mandatory vaxes, lockdowns, punitive action against anybody that doesn't do what they say. They're looking for ways to be more creative with the punitive action. So if these are not popular ideas, right, and I don't believe they are, and I think they're polling, Biden's vax popularity is way below 50% now. Is way below 50% think that he's doing the right job. I mean, they're flying the plane into the mountain, right? It's the same as the voting rights thing. They know they're going to lose. Now, their bright idea today is to make it a talking filibuster, force the Republicans to actually hold the floor and talk if they're going to filibuster it. And they did it with a note, so they could get past the 60 vote requirement to debate it, right? So, the image they're sitting out is we're cheating the Senate rules, and we're going to drag the Senate to an impasse to get a bill that's not popular and that they don't have 50 votes for, right? And no one's the other big thing that's going on in the country is no one's looking at this and saying I can't vote, right? They're saying the voter ID is like an 84% issue, right? Almost everybody says, yeah, it's fair to require adults to have an ID to vote, right? And we all know now that the drop boxes and so forth, that was never here before. You don't act, you can't act like that. That's expected of American elections. What I would do if I were the Republicans is I would say, you want your federal holiday for elections? Fine, you got your federal holiday. But you go to the polls on that day and vote, or you don't vote, right? No absentee, no excuses, no drop boxes, no ballot harvesting. You show up with your ID and you vote on election day. If they're willing to do that, I would be willing to give them their holiday.
I kind of like that idea in that sense, is that because we've talked about, this is not voting weeks, it's not voting month. It is
Right.
kind of election month or whatever. It's election day, and we have look, I've taken advantage of all these programs. I've done early voting and stuff like that. I feel a little guilty at times, but it makes my life easier. But if that went away, an absentee ballot, voting, went away, I would show up at the polls. Okay, it's the system has made me lazy. I'm just like the whole the pandemic. We do things from home, and we don't want to. A lot of people, a lot of Americans don't want to go back into an office anymore. They enjoy working from home. They've now moved to another part of the country, and they enjoy. They're really enjoying life more now. They get better work-life balance. All these kind of things. Yeah, I hate the idea of making it a federal holiday, but if it was an exchange for things that you said, okay, that's a reasonable trade-off there, is to say go there, because that's, to me, solves a lot of the problems. And one of my on this voting rights thing, the Democrats, the thing that drives me crazy really is just how much they have distorted what is going on here. Right? To federalize these elections, for what reason? And they use Georgia as an example, but Georgia is actually much more liberal in what they've put forth than, say, New York City.
Or Delaware, where the president's from.
Right. So you have
Delaware's voting law is much more restrictive than Georgia's.
Right. But you can't talk about those Democrat areas, right, of doing that. You've got to focus in on Georgia, where Stacey Abrams is from, and all the other stuff that happened, and where Trump made the big deal, et cetera, et cetera. So, but very few people in the media are willing to call out the Democrats and the administration for perpetrating a lie on this voting rights bill, that it is not it's nothing anywhere near going to solve the problem. It's only going to make things far worse. And but this is the Democrats trying to be very ham-fisted and just strong-arming things. But this talking filibuster.
It's also because they know that they're going to get clobbered if they can't cheat on a pretty wide level. Bob says, I don't know why they wouldn't accept it. At least you'd be able to say you did something right about it, because then you're arguing for secret unmanned ballot boxes and people being able to vote without ID. I think they've got to get off that one. I think they don't get off that one. People do not judge that requirement to be ridiculous, right? You hear less and less actually from the Democrats about voter ID, right? They've gone to they're talking about gerrymandering, which, your state is the most gerrymandered state in the union, and it is not gerrymandered for the benefit of Republicans, correct?
Right. Yeah.
So
absolutely.
So they've shifted the focus to that, and the ballot, voting locations. It's like voting locations is a local problem, right? That's the big complaint in Fulton County in Atlanta is, they took our voting locations. Okay, talk to Fulton County about that. You don't think there's enough voting locations? Straighten that out with them, right? There's also, growing evidence that Georgia, the election was not straight. It might well have been won by Trump, as is the case in Wisconsin, as is the case in Michigan, as the case in Arizona. Things are moving slowly, and it's not going to, they're not going to kick Biden out at some point and put Trump back in. But, at this point, what's important is that everyone knows that this was won dishonestly, right?
Well, and that's for people to figure out and argue. The elections have been certified. Biden and Harris are going to be in office. it's you might be out there to prove a point or whatever, but the elections are done and over, and we're facing elections, and we continue to move forward on that. But it's just one of the things that bothers me about what the Democrats say too is that what else besides, so you mentioned the ballot boxes and the voter ID. Also they've made a big deal about the Georgia thing about the electioneering, the handing out of food or water with 150 feet of the poll or whatever. It's like, okay, this is not about food and water per se.
No, it's not.
This is about
No.
they're setting they've set the boundary as to how, at what distance you can hand out election material by the polling place. And I've lived in Montgomery County all my life, and we have, I can't remember what it is. Is it 100 feet or whatever? There's some sign that's up every time,
Yeah.
and to remind you that there is no electioneering from beyond this point. So you can't hand out anything past that point. There's signs or all kinds of things like that. That's all that really is. And what's always gets lost in that part of the conversation is that people were handing out things that were like food that they had put the stickers on for the candidates. So that's electioneering. That's election material, right? And so that's what it is. But the Democrats keep trying to turn this into, it's like they want to prevent people who are standing in long lines from getting food or water. That's not the issue.
Starve them to death. It's like,
right.
It's not really right. The other thing is like, the other research I want to see is like, what is actually the average time people stand in line to vote, right? Because for me, it's almost every election, it's pretty much zero. And if it's not zero, it's less than 5 minutes, right? Now I know that, different, and they've now moved 3 precincts into the building where we vote. So there's 3 precincts of us voting all at the same time in the same place. So, it ought to be overcrowded, but it's not. Right. And, there are places where it gets crowded. When I lived in Arlington, it would take you 30, 40 minutes sometimes. But, for the most part, I mean, we're not talking about, very few people are standing in line 8 hours to vote. And again, if they are, their issue is with their local people, right? Atlanta, you need to talk to Fulton County. And, because you're going to have to like take some money from other programs, other freebies you've given yourselves, and put it on this. If you don't consider this important, and to this point you have not considered it important, or you would have been already funding it, then it's not our problem that you guys don't make enough polls. And no one's missing. If you get in line 1 minute before it closes, and it takes you an hour and a half to get up there to actually vote, you get to vote, right? You're in line for a while, but you get to vote. It's not like your vote gets turned away, right? All you have to do is show up before it stops. So the whole thing is built on falsehoods and innuendo, and they want this Jim Crow talk. They want to paint us as racist and all this kind of stuff. That's another thing. That a spent force is calling Republicans racist to finally run out of steam for Democrats. It's not going to stop them, right? They're still going to do it because they don't really have anything else. But it used to be you had to like counter that accusation, right? I can remember Reagan trying to sort of like almost prove he wasn't a racist, right? But you don't have to do that anymore. It's like, if you're a Republican, they call you a racist. It's just de rigueur, right?
And you have people, like one of my, like Joy Reid. She's one of the biggest race baiters out there. I mean, she drops that
right.
all the time. And so it's, to me, this gets, at a certain point in time, isn't this kind of like the boy who cried wolf? I mean, how many times do you do it before people become kind of, they're like, forget about that over time. And they also are just like you're going to become tone deaf on them. You're going to like, that is just so much noise, white noise, because I've heard it so many times from the same people, because that's all they want to talk about.
They can't prove. You keep waiting on them to show up in their Klan robe, and they never do. Who does? The Democrat governor of Virginia, right? He has a Klan robe. He's not the blackface. He's the Klan robe.
But what you said something interesting about kind of the election, about where you're voting and everything like this, because it made me think about where I vote over here, not too far away from my house. So it's I don't even know what they call it. I mean, I don't even know if it's a community center. It's on the agricultural farm park over on Moncaster Mill Road or Moncaster Road, and so it's not a huge building, but if you if you have more than the line probably now, with social distancing, I bet you can't have more than about 6 people standing inside, and everybody else would have to stand outside. The place is actually, it's fairly small. They don't have a lot of places, little, places for you to cast your vote, the little booths and things like this. So, yeah, is this not more of a problem of where the local election officials have got to really take stock and figure out, do we have we, based on election results for say the last 2 or 3 election cycles, do we have the right facilities? Have we have range for the right personnel?
Right.
If you've got a small little room and you can only stick 6 of these booths in there, but you've got a line out the door that people are waiting 45 minutes in line or more, then it's like, you got to fix that. Can
Right.
you not
The
find another?
building, that building's not right for that job
Yeah,
then.
it's
If
inadequate. So
that's the case.
right,
If you can manage it 6 at a time, then use the building.
that's right. That's right.
You
And
know?
so I think it needs to be, they need to look at that and say, and I don't really think that the officials are spending enough time on that. Part of that is because they look at this as like, okay, well, we're going to do all this early voting for 2.5 weeks or whatever it is. So that should ease the crush. So we should be fine. And a lot of times they still get, slammed because the models were incorrect. All their presumptions, were incorrect. So they should be able to look at the data, how many people have been voting, and say, well, we've seen a spike at this precinct. We may need to move this to another location because that's more people that can adequately be handled in the
Right.
hours that we have set forth.
Right.
And there is times a day. I know in Montgomery County, at least when I was spending more time voting on election day, it's like people always lined up at the beginning when the polls opened, and there was always a big rush at the end, and not a lot happening in the middle. And
Right.
so, you know, and I don't know. I mean, with a pandemic, people theoretically have more time to vote too, right? I mean, a lot of people are working from home. It's like going even to your point. It's like on election day, go vote. I mean, you've been working from home anyway. Most of you, anyways. Like, how difficult is this to go out there and do this?
That's right.
And just time it. If you figure the morning and the late afternoon or big days, big parts or late afternoon, then go mid morning. Go 1 o'clock. See if that. I've tried different times of the day even for early voting and just trying to test the waters, trying to find a time where I'm basically walking right in. I want to walk right in, walk right out. So anyway, but on this voting rights thing, I mean, you mentioned the talking filibuster. Schumer's trying to find ways around this, but they've got a problem in Manchin and Synema, right? They've been holding forth. They've been staying strong on this for the most part, and the Democrats. I mean, what happens with Schumer? I mean, they talk about this thing. The bill's not. I don't see how the bill gets passed, and then what?
Right. I mean, how long are you going to do this filibuster? Right? Can we do this all the way to November? I'm good with that. Right? Nothing else comes out of the Senate this year. But I don't think they can do that. They also, they have a problem now. Their coalition is, it was ascendant for a couple of cycles, right? And so you have the extreme left accepts no compromise, and they're deeply disappointed. They're like, wow, we didn't get all the stuff that we were sure we were going to get with both houses of Congress and the president. We're not, in fact, you're going to end up with not all that much of it at all. And it was the point, it was the part that they did end up with is the part they were least interested in, right? The infrastructure. AOC doesn't care about infrastructure, right? She wants giveaways and lose our sovereignty and open borders and all that kind of stuff. So, they're having a nasty internecine fight, right? They don't really have a way out of this. They don't really have a vision that says, this is what we're doing. And, we can fight collaterally about what makes that happen, but this is what we're trying to accomplish, because they're trying to accomplish, to me, two things that are sort of at odds. One is a sort of, they're trying to look not crazy and sort of somewhat centrist. And then on the other hand, they're trying to do some pretty radical stuff. So I think people have picked up on the fact that Build Back Better is pretty radical stuff, and that It's not in its present form. It's not passable. One of the other proposals they talk about, and it'll be interesting to see if they can do this with such a long process to do these things now, is to break it apart and try to get the most popular elements of it through the Senate and put the others on the cutting room floor. And that's fine, except for, what's going to go on the cutting room floor is going to be the AOC agenda, right? And so that whole, the squad and all those people will be against it.
So, Mr. SEC, why did Nick Saban want Joe Manchin to vote for this thing?
Well, Joe Manchin is from West Virginia, from Fairmont, West Virginia. I mean, Saban, and he's known Joe Manchin for years. And the interesting thing about that, yes, he signed a letter. Jerry West, the logo, he's on the letter. Paul Tagliabue is on the letter, former commissioner of the NFL, Bethesda guy, Montgomery County guy. Manchin says that Saban put a thing on the letter saying, but don't vote to break the filibuster. Either it passes or it doesn't pass. I mean, Manchin said that. Saban hasn't denied it. So maybe that is true. Who knows?
I love that. That's funny, actually. Yeah, I mean, it's just, you see, I mean, I had to throw that in there because I thought this was just too funny to think of that, when Saban doing that, because the media is like, oh, look, Nick Saban, the great coach is telling him to do that. But there's always that other little side to that, the other side of the story there that you don't quite know the full thing going on here. I don't know. I mean, let me ask you this, do you think that Joe Biden listened too much to the left-wing part of the party, the AOCs, the Bernie Sanders, and that if you do believe that he did so, if he had charted a more centrist path in some things, that he would be in better shape today? Or is it just is this just Joe Biden and Kamala Harris and the Democrat agenda just being terrible in and of itself?
Well, I mean, if you look at the premise of your question, I think you find the answer. The premise is, someone was suggesting to him a program, right? Someone was suggesting to him a way to run this, and then some other people were suggesting to him another run it. And did he lean on one pack of suggestions too much, and as opposed to the other, right? So, I mean, were there groups of suggestions being argued over Trump? No, right? Trump knew what he wanted to do. Right, he was the legislative package, right? These are the bills that we need to pass. This is the things we need to do, right? It was about him. Now, the reality of politics is like you run into these things and you have to change and adjust and so forth, right? So no one gets everything they want. It was the same with Reagan. I mean, we weren't fighting over the ideological direction of the party under Reagan, right? Reagan led the ideological direction of the party, right? He set the pace. Biden does not set the pace. And people can sense that weakness. That's a big difference, right? And I don't know if, you said, well, if he had gone centrist, they would have stabbed him. So, it's like, if you don't have your own program, then you're subject to being blown around by the wind. And that's what's going on, is the wind's coming pretty strong from two sides.
Yeah. So it's kind of a loaded question. March for Life. So we've got 5 days away. I didn't think about this until this morning. Everything has been so upside down in the last couple of years. I had kind of forgotten about this. This is a big deal. I'm kind of curious to see whether or not it returns in full force, kind of like pre-pandemic, type of attendance, to see if people are going to come in like they did from all over the country. But the impetus here this year, to me, though, will be the fact of what's happening in the Supreme Court may gather
much more. This could be the last one, right?
That's right. That's right. It could wind up being the last one. We don't know for sure, but something that I did not think would happen as quickly as it has is that we are addressing this huge issue now in the Supreme Court. And for the pro-life movement, this is big. This is the moment, a momentous type of thing like that. But I'm kind of curious to see how that turns out. I mean, last year they did virtual. I think the pro-life movement is very solid and they keep things together very well. but I mean, they are coming in now under a Democrat administration after some really good years under Trump, where they were, I mean, Trump and Pence participated quite a bit actually
right?
during their time.
Trump's the only president to ever address it.
Yeah, so I
And
mean,
I
it
think
was,
Pence may be the only vice president to ever address it. I mean, they were on this every year. They were active partners in the pro-life struggle.
yeah,
So this may be the last one because of the case. If it goes against us, then you have to think that we're probably stuck with abortion, right? We're so with a right to abortion in this country, if the court does not rule appropriately on this. So I say appropriately as we wish it would. I mean, I think it's appropriate, but
no
So
argument.
the other thing is, it's a big thing. Now, the thing about that is, it's like, so let's say that happens. Say this is the last one. Say we get the ruling from the court that we want. You saw there's a good sign yesterday that Texas 6-week ban was allowed to stand. And apparently will be the law of Texas going forward. But the where will the energy of the right to life movement go? What else might those people join forces to do? Right? It's kind of exciting to think about. They won't all be on whatever the next train is. That's a lot of energy there of allies and people who try to do the right thing and who care about civil rights.
Right, and it wasn't completely a Republican thing, because I mean, I had this on the list. I had this this Democrats for Life America. They got bounced out of Busboys and Poets when Busboys and Poets found out that these guys were actually a pro-life group, and Planned Parenthood has used that restaurant before, and Busboys and Poets is pretty well known in DC. But it's, they were like, for the safety of our patrons and things like that. Oh yeah, it was fine for Planned Parenthood to hold whatever, but
the baby killers are safe, but the people trying to save the babies not safe.
Yeah, dangerous. That risks our people and everything like that. Hey, anyway, all right, 2 minutes.
2 minutes. What's left on here? Dun 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 dun. Oh, I don't think Synema gives a rat's patootie about Emily's list. So so what? Okay, one thing I did want to talk about is Youngkin. Governor Youngkin took office last Saturday. He has issued the executive order, first day executive order, saying it's up to parents to decide whether masks are worn in schools. The three big school systems here, Fairfax, Alexandria, Arlington, said no. They don't really have their plan set to fight that, and it's kind of disappointing. They look a little unprepared right now. I hope it gets better, right? But right now, it's like it's starting off a little gang that couldn't shoot straight, unfortunately. So we will look to see if that's improved, and we're still cheering for them. But that was kind of a rough blow.
Yeah. I mean, I guess if you're going to do that, you better be ready. There's going to be opposition from teachers.
See, that's my thing. It's like they should have been prepared for that, because you had to know that was coming at you.
Yeah, absolutely. But we still hold hope that things will work well for the Youngkin administration. There's definitely with the Virginia House in Republican hands. He's got some pretty good tools at his disposal at this point, to be able to get some things done. So
the other thing is on that subject, the Attorney General fired all the civil rights people who had worked for the Democrat predecessor, who were anti-Catholic, anti-family, used the law to impose their anti-religion agenda, and he fired them day one. So good for Jason Miyares.
Yeah, all right. Start. So I cross my fingers. We have a gubernatorial election in Maryland in November, and I really don't know how this is going to go. The candidates, Republican, I'm not, I'll have to wait and see. At this point in time, I'm not jumping up and down yet, but we haven't gotten into the real meat of the season yet either for that. And their Democrats, I'm not really sure who they're throwing, who's going to wind up being their nominee anyway. So that's probably slight advantage to the Republicans at this stage, but. Maryland being
Biden only 52% in Maryland, so it's not undoable.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if if you kind of use the Hogan playbook more or less, and Kelly Schultz is very much trying to do that, I think, or will try to do that. We'll see. But Hogan's personality was, I think, was a big factor also in winning people over and stuff like that. So we'll have to wait and see. You know how relatable Kelly will be and things like that. Saying that Kelly makes it through the primary, but I think she's the strong stand. We've got a very strong. You know, there's a Trump guy in there, a delegate, but I hate to say, just it's too off the rails for a lot of people, but he's got support. So he's kind of the one guy that could, if he gets the nomination, it's all over, you know. So that's the thing. There's just no way if he gets a nomination, there's just, the Republicans are doomed in Maryland for that. So anyway, thanks everyone for joining us today. Please, as always, stay well, stay healthy. Remember, we live in the greatest country in the world. Do not let anyone tell you otherwise. And God bless America. We will see you again next week with another exciting edition of Accuracy in America. How about that?